So you were there. You were at NEC with J.C. Sanford,
Yes.
who you then later on collectively created the Schumacher-Sanford Sound Assembly.
Correct. So he was doing his doctorate while I was doing my master's.
Okay.
We became really great friends and both had the same vision for our postgraduate adventures. And so we started this group. He came over to my house one night. We shared a bottle of wine and we said, how do we want to do this? Came up with a name, came up with a concept for the band, and got started down that long process of meeting some players, taking recommendations, and assembling a group of players over the next few years that we were really feeling connected to, and we felt were honoring our music in a way that was propelling it forward.
Sure. Now, are you still in Boston at this point? I mean, you're still in Boston anyway, but is the idea starting in Boston, or where are you finding the musicians?
No, we went straight to New York for that.
Gotcha. Okay. So as soon as you
JC
graduate, you said, let's start this band in New York.
Yes, that was where we thought we would have the best success finding the players and having access to the sort of player that we thought was going to gel with our music.
Sure. Now, did you have a sound concept involved in this? Because, of course, people have such an individualistic way of writing that it would be easy to combine two people into one band and have it sound like a disjunct mess of, one style versus another style or something like that. Did you say, all right, this is the vibe of the band that we're going for here, or were your writing styles similar enough or maybe in the same zone that you could operate without having to think about the specifics?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of discussion about that because we were both, as you say, very much in the same zone. We had both studied with Brookmeyer for the last 2 years. We both loved Maria Schneider's music, Jim McNeely's music, and all of those progressive jazz orchestra composers. When we were, focused on instrumentation, orchestration, color, the same sort of harmonic concepts. And even though our writing styles are definitely different, they complemented each other very easily. So it never felt like a disjointed effort. It always felt like a cohesive sound to the band.
Sure. And that makes sense. I totally agree with you on that front anyway. And for everybody who's listening, the record is The Edge of the Mind. You made a record with that band in 2009?
Correct.
And that's been out for a while, so you can find all that music there.
Yeah, it's also on Spotify and all the usual digital vendors as well.
All the good stuff. Now, give me an idea who was in that band. Who did you find that was able to realize those musical concepts?
Right. So a lot of these guys were Broadway people. So that gave us players who were very well-versed in doubling in the saxophone section.
Sure.
And so we could literally throw any variety of orchestration at this group and they could eat it up. In fact, look forward to it.
Sure, because it gives you a little challenge to have to figure out.
Right, exactly. So, guys like Ben Kono, Dan Willis, Eric Rasmussen, Chris Bacchus. We had Dave Rickenberg on Barry for a long time. Interestingly, a lot of those saxophone players were playing not their primary saxophone in that band. Because
did you do that on purpose, or it just worked out that way?
No, it wasn't that we did it on purpose. Well, I take that back. Sometimes it was actually because we preferred their sound on alto instead of tenor, which was their typical saxophone, for instance. But it also had a lot to do with just personnel at the time. So what position in the saxophone section was open, and who were we looking? What position were we looking to fill? And if a reed player came through who was a really monster player, but was playing their secondary saxophone, then that's fine because they're going to be playing a lot of doubles anyway.
Sure.
John O'Gallagher is another name who came along a little later into the band. He was an amazing player. And then in the trombone section, Alan Ferber, who's a monster player. Chris Olness was our bass trombone player. Mark Patterson on trombone, an amazing player. In the trumpet section, we had John Bailey, we had Dave Smith, We had Bud Burridge playing lead for a long time, John Owens. We had a lot of different guys in that section. And then the rhythm section was fairly consistent for a while, actually. We had Deanna Witkowski on piano, Dave Ambrosio on the bass. We had John Hollenbeck on drums. And then we had a couple of different guitar players. We had
Andy Green was on there.
Andy Green was our first guitar player, and then Pete McCann came around a little later, when Andy was too busy. So that was kind of the band. We had some players in and out, but otherwise, it was fairly consistent for a little while. It was great.
That's pretty good, because it's not easy to keep a consistent band together when you got 17 people in the group.
No, definitely not.
That's a labor of love for sure. And at the whole time you're coming down from Boston, by this time you were teaching it. You've been teaching at Pentucket for a long time, presumably.
Right.
You had started doing that. And
so I was commuting down from Boston and crashing on JC's couch. And that's how we made it work for a long time. About
how often were you able,
years.
Oh, go on. Sorry.
About 11 years.
Wow.
We did that band.
Uh-huh. How often were you going down in the beginning when you started doing it?
Well, we would do a handful of reading sessions over the year, the first year or two. And once we started getting some gigs, we cut back on the reading sessions and really just rehearsed leading up to an event. So we would do, we'd have a Tuesday night hit and we would rehearse Sunday, Monday, for instance. A couple of rehearsals, long rehearsals. So I'd be down there for 2 or 3 days in a row. Sometimes I'd have to go back to teach and then come back down. It was an ordeal.
Sure. Yeah.
But it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, great.